I'm a university student at a small state school somewhere in the US. I've lived in the dorms for 3 years since it's easy and I'm used to it. I'm an upperclassman now, so I get to live in apartment-style housing, which basically means I get a kitchen and bedroom to myself. There are maybe 800 people that live in this area of dorms, all upperclassmen. When the coronavirus got more serious and my school moved online for the rest of the semester, most people moved out. They even offered a small refund for people who left before May. My roommates were of the people who moved out and got the refund, leaving me alone in the apartment with the kitchen to myself and a freezer to stock up with frozen dinners and microwavable chicken nuggets. About a week ago, I got a knock on my door from an RA. She was immediately striking to me since she had natural red hair, a rarity where I'm from. She told me I was the only person left in my building, but I still had to abide by university policies. I had never seen her before, and she kind of gave me a weird vibe, but I figured it was due to the high-stress situation. Enough with the background. Let's get into the crux of when shit hit the fan. It was later in the evening, around 8 or so, and I had just come back from grocery shopping. The sun had set, and it made the entire complex look a bit spooky. I locked up my bike, keyed myself into the building, and walked down the first floor hallway to the elevator. It's a long hallway, not that much different from the one featured in The Shining, and it's always given me the creeps. I must have zoned out because I dropped one of my bags. As I bent down to pick it up, I heard a phone ring. Now I'm not talking about some iPhone ringtone. I mean an old-timey phone, like from an episode of The Twilight Zone. I looked around the hallway trying to locate where it was coming from, and it was the door directly in front of the elevator. I listened for a second while it kept ringing, then it abruptly ended, almost as if someone had answered it. I was spooked, if I'm being honest, but I made a mental note to tell my RA about it since I'm sure someone would want that old phone if they forgot it. College kids are into weird stuff. I would not put it past one of them to own a phone like that. Then it happened. There was a very light tap on the door, like someone hit their nail against it. Suffice to say, I ran past the elevator and took the stairs all the way up to the 6th floor. The next morning, the RA knocked on my door again. She gave me that weird vibe again, and I noticed she was not wearing a university housing t-shirt like all the other RAs did. I told her about the phone, and she dismissed it. She didn't even ask me what room it was. She told me that someone in another building complained that it smelled like pot in my area, and she had to check it out. After a search of my room proved I had nothing illicit, she turned around and said, "Oh, and the elevator is broken. You'll have to take the stairs until they can fix it." I locked the door behind her. 2 nights ago, I woke up and heard the phone ringing again. I pulled a t-shirt on and walked to my front door and listened. It was coming directly from across the hall. Fear began to set in, and I waited until it stopped. Just like last time, it ended on a sharp note. The bang on the door was what really woke me up. Startled, I jumped back from the door and scurried into my room like a bat out of hell. I quietly locked the door and looked around my room for something that could be used as a weapon. With a pit in my stomach, I realized I had left my phone outside. I sat like that for a long time, waiting to hear something else out there. I must have fallen asleep. I woke up with a sore neck after leaning against my door all night long. I nearly ran to the front office yesterday morning. Just like the RA, they dismissed any claim I made about an old-timey phone ringing in random rooms across my building. They told me the bangs I heard were most likely the pipes adjusting to not being in use. Seriously? And if I ever felt I was truly in danger, I could call campus PD. Defeated, I walked back to my room and holed myself up with some beer and 2 frozen pizzas. I fell asleep while the sun was still up. I woke up again to the phone ringing, but this time it was much closer. It was coming from one of the empty rooms in my apartment. I was frustrated with the whole situation, and sort of tipsy, so I banged on the door and shouted, We're in the middle of a fucking pandemic. This is not the time to play games with people. Get the fuck out of my room. The cops are on their way." Silence followed for a few blissful seconds. I was waiting for someone to walk out with a wide grin and beaming eyes. But what happened was much worse. An intricate knocking came through the door. Knock, 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 knock. A brief pause. Knock, knock, knock. At this point, I was almost in tears. I ran out of my room and decided to call the police while jogging to the campus station, which was only a 5-minute walk away. I should have never left my room. Waiting for me in front of the elevator was the RA, except she was far from what I had seen before. Her skin was void of color, and her hair was falling on the ground. She was contorted in a pose with all 4 of her limbs on the ground and her belly in the air. She came at me, fast. I ran past her and into the staircase, where I practically jumped down all 6 flights of stairs. She was following me, like a spider, crawling backwards down the steps at an inhuman speed. I burst through the door into the night and ran to the police station. They took my statement and actually listened to me about everything. I was in full-on tears at this point. The woman managed to convince me that I was not crazy, and she offered me a jacket so I could sleep in the lobby until sunrise. I haven't been able to sleep and instead wrote this post. The woman at the station told me that there is no RA on the staff that matches the description of the girl. In fact, there has not been an RA with red hair on the staff since the first batch of students arrived at the dorm in the 1960s. She made me tell her about the knocks on the door multiple times before the color drained from her face, and she told me something that will haunt me until I die. I don't know how that's possible, but it sounds like the Morse code for the word hide. My husband always makes such a mess. I'm always finding little brown hairs of his all over the house. Just this morning, I found a couple strands lying on the couch. Your father, I always tell my son, might as well be a dog with the amount of hair he sheds. It's a full-time job scooping them up, but I do it anyways, because a clean house is a happy house. They say that being a mother is the hardest job in the world, and boy, do I believe it. Mornings around here can be pretty hectic. What with my son and husband both needed so much attention. Today, my husband was in a panic because his favorite dress shirt was missing the top 2 buttons. How could they just disappear? He asked me, as though I summoned buttons out of thin air. But I am as much as a psychologist as I am a wife, and I knew how to smooth things over. Not to worry, I told him. I have it taken care of. This was just what he needed to hear, and I handed him a second shirt instead. It was the one with the blue stripes that he likes so much. My husband grabbed his wallet and rushed out the door, still in time to catch the early train if he hurried. Not even 10 seconds after my husband had left, and my son was already bursting into tears. "What's the matter?" I asked him. He pointed at the underside of his arm, and I immediately located a purple bruise. "Another one?" I asked. Well, I know just how to fix that. Of course, there was only one thing that could fix a bruise. He was going to need a magical mommy kiss. My son held up his wrist to me with tears in his eyes, and I gave it a peck. Just like that, and the tears were gone. Mommy magic is instant. You see, funny how simple life can be when you're his age. "Did you want to go to the store with mommy today?" I asked him in an excited voice. I knew my son would love that. He always loved going to the store with me. I guess it's about as much of an adventure as a boy of 4 can have. I needed a needle and thread, so we journeyed together to the craft store, where I purchased some filament and a pack of needles. Naturally, my son wanted a tiny stuffed figure that we passed on one of the shelves, so I let him have it. By the time we got back, it was already dark outside, and I knew that it was time. Footsteps echoed from outside. The monster was coming. I quickly shuffled my son into a closet and handed him his favorite sippy cup. "Be very quiet," I whispered. I barely had time to close the closet door when I heard the monster rip open the front door. "Hello?" I asked, walking into the kitchen. "Where is that little shit?" my husband asked. "He needs to learn some respect." I didn't need to smell the alcohol on him to know that he had been drinking again. He always acted this way when he drank. I was so scared. "You're not going to hurt us anymore," I said, walking over to the sink. This seemed to anger him even more, and he scowled at me dangerously. "Oh really?" he slurred. "And what are you going to do about it?" I pulled out the tiny figure from the craft store and held it up to him. After making some modifications of my own, it looks strikingly similar to my husband now. The doll had a pair of button eyes sewed on its face, my husband's buttons. It had a clump of hair attached to its head, my husband's hair. Before he could even reach me, I stuck the voodoo doll head first down the sink, and with a flip of a switch, turned the garbage disposal on. My husband always makes such a mess.